This is WT for TST, and this evening we're honoured to be joined by boxing legend, he won't admit that, Barry Jones. How are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm all right. I'm good. I'm getting used to this boxing legend thing. It's not real, but I'm starting to like it.
I'm about to say you don't like that though, do you? You don't believe it, do you?
Well, it's because I'm not. You know, is legend another word for old? If that's the case, then yes, I am an old boxing, but I'm not a boxing legend. You know, if you're on the telly for a little bit, or you're good at your job, or you're not, or whatever. But you know, for me, boxing, a legend in boxing it should be saved for people who were great. I think that's my opinion. I'm too honest about the sport. This will probably come up quite often, but I'm more honest about my career than anything else. So yeah.
That's good. We're in for an interesting ride then, my friend. So, first time on TST, what we like to do is it's a little bit like just find out who you are behind for you, the camera, the gloves, whatever, and really find out about the kind of life you've had, and you know, let's do that and see what happens. So, for you, late 70s, early 80s in Cardiff.
Yeah, that's when I got involved in boxing. Yeah, I was born in the early 70s, but yeah, it's I'm from a council estate called Ely, which was, when it was built, like maybe the 50s, maybe. It was the biggest council estate in Europe at the time. And ironically, we've had Nicky Piper's just outside of Ely. Nicky Piper was a good fought for the world title 3 times, of course. And Steve Robinson, who was a world champion, of course, from my estate, lived in the same street as me when we were kids.
Oh, really? Wow.
So yeah, so my street, Snowden Road, not only for the short time he lived there, but we'll take it anyway. But yeah, I wasn't even the best fighter in my street, even though I was a world champion. Figure that out. But yeah, I know. It's really bad. But yeah, so obviously being from a big council estate, you know, sports was a big thing, and education wasn't such a big thing. And sports were a big thing because it kept you out of trouble. And boxing, you know, being probably the most working class of all sports, was something that we were all drawn to at some point of our life. But it takes discipline, boxing, and that's why, you know, so many people try it, but very few stick at it, because, you know, it's not just how good you are, it's how committed you are. And you'll find that the more committed have more success than the more skilled. That's just the way it goes. Steve Robinson, again, I always go back to Steve, who was a skillful fighter, but wasn't nowhere near, you know, he wasn't as skillful as me, but he was a better fighter than me on paper, for sure. You know, and because he was more committed than any man I've ever met in my entire life. He had skill. I'm not saying he didn't have, obviously he had skill. You can't be that good and have that much success without having skill. But yeah, same with me. I had no power. There was loads of things I wasn't good at, but I was committed to my sport. I haven't drunk since I was 17 years of age, you know, and all I did in boxing was my life, and I committed myself to it. And even though I knew I wasn't going to earn millions, but it was what I wanted to do. I had a passion and a drive, and I had a focus, and I was lucky that I found that.
So let's rewind a little bit then. So, because before you even got into boxing, what was your childhood like?
Yeah, I could paint a picture of, you know, of poverty and struggle and you know and violence and all the rest of it, and, you know, and crime, but not really. I was surrounded by all of those things, but my childhood was great. It was, you know, we were out all day, you know, as long as we got in before it was dark, you know, it was that sort. I was from that era, you know. I was lucky, you know, things were going on, but, you know, I didn't get involved in much stuff. You know, to be fair, boxing saves everyone's life. You know, there's better stories than mine. It saved my life, but I was never going to be a drug dealer. I was never going to be a thief, really. I don't think. You know, I might have done some. I've done some silly things in my life, but I've never done any major crimes. And I don't think I would have been. I just wasn't built that way for certain things. Just not my makeup's not like that. And so, you know, but I would have had a mundane life. That's what I would have had. You know, what everyone else, you know, that almost that conveyor belt of what happens. You get a job, you marry the first girl who speaks to you, you have kids, as many kids you can have, and you get a house and you live in that house the rest of your life. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not having a dig at that, but you don't stress outside your environment. You don't, you know. It's great now that, you know, that kids from lower working class and below are getting better education. They're going to universities. That never happened in my generation. I never knew any kid who went to university, or went to even college, really, let's be honest. So, now yet they're experiencing things, and it's great. But at the time, you lived in your same area and never went outside it. And I don't mean your city, I mean your area of the city. And that's where you stayed, and you don't know, and you didn't venture outside that. That's your life. And a lot of my friends, especially the ones I grew up with up until like my early teens, they still live in the same house or the same street or the same little bubble, and never gone outside. Listen, they have a great time, and they live them, and they're friends for life, and they enjoy themselves, but they've never experienced stuff. So boxing gave me that reach as an amateur to go around the world and to see things, and obviously as a professional. And once you win a world title and stuff, then you get to see different stuff. So, yeah, my life. I don't really talk too much about my early life because they're not just my secrets; they're other people's secrets. So,
listen, that's fair enough, mate. So, 10 years old, took you into
grass.
So, 10 years old, you start boxing. So, talk to us about your amateur career, because you had some amateur career, didn't you?
Yeah, I was a better amateur. Actually, I was an amateur when I was a pro. I boxed like an amateur throughout my pro career. I just stuck with what I was good at. Boxing wasn't a thing that I wanted to do. Basketball was my favourite sport, ironically, being a midget. But yeah, I love basketball. I love basketball to this day. I only subscribe. It's back on Sky though, basketball, but I only subscribed to BT Sport, not for the boxing. Even though I was on BT Sport, it was the basketball. They had the basketball. That's why I wanted to watch it. So, I watch it to this day. I live it.
Who's your team?
Lakers, because I was an 80s kid. So, Lakers, it was Lakers and Celtics, not every year, but for the most part of it. So they were the two. So, but the Lakers were the Celtics were probably a better team overall, but the Lakers were the show team. There was the flashy, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was early 80s, but Magic Johnson, it was just, they were different gear to watch. They were great to watch. And you'd only get to see the finals anyway, to be honest, back then. So, but I love basketball because I was always like sports you're involved in all the time. And basketball, boxing, you even when you don't have the ball, you're always involved. And that's something that, because I was a hyperactive kid, a really hyperactive kid. You can tell now I was hyperactive because I don't shut up. I can't stop moving. I'm fidgety. And that's how I am. I've always been that way. So I need to be stimulated all the time. So sports and sex were two things that I wanted to do the most. And I wasn't good looking enough to have a lot of sex. So sport was the next best thing, I'm afraid.
Oh,
I followed my brother, who he wasn't a better boxer than me, but he was naturally more skillful than I was at everything, to be honest. So I'm more aggressive. So I followed him. He went down the boxing gym. I went down there with him, and he stayed. He was quite a good amateur as a schoolboy and a youth. But I loved it because it was just all, again, the noise and the smell and just being involved all the time. And I wasn't very good to start with, but then once I had my first fight, I lost it. But then I had a good run of fights, and I only really lost then after that in championships. And semi-finals and finals. I never lost a Welsh fight. I never lost a Welsh final. Never lost a Welsh title fight ever. Beat some good kids on the way, and I won a European silver medal at 17. That was probably my biggest thing. And I turned pro too young, but I turned pro anyway at 18. I knew what I wanted to do. By the time I got to 15, I knew what I was going to do. I knew it. I didn't sit any exams, which was a really idiotic thing to do, but I just knew what I wanted to be, a boxer, and so I took that risk.
When you talked before, earlier, you talked about the council estate being in a bubble, not being too far, you're part of the city. What was that like when you were an amateur and you were going around, distance, the world, Europe, whatever? What did that feel like for a kid out of that council estate from Cardiff, compared seeing different things you've never seen before?
Well, you don't go anywhere. You don't go anywhere. So, you go to Canada. I went to Montreal and I didn't go anywhere. Well, not doing that. I went to Dubai once on a holiday, literally, and I wouldn't eat the hummus. I don't eat that. I love hummus, but I don't eat the naff. I've never seen it before. I don't know what it is. If you can't buy it in a tin, it's not worth eating. It was like that, that was it. It's like, you can't get it. They don't sell it in Tesco. I'm not getting that. Though they probably did sell it in Tesco at the time, but I'd never seen it, so I'm not eating that rubbish. It was only chickpeas in it, but you sort of just stay with your group, you don't really take a risk and go and examine and explore. And it's only way. And so you go on a few trips and then you start to see it, and then it blows your mind because it opens your world. And sport does that for a lot of kids who would never see anything else but their well, I guess no, it's their postcode, isn't it? Is what they call them, postcode gangs, area code gangs, and you're stuck in there, and that's what it was like for us kids growing up. But we also had a great childhood. No, there was loads of violence around you and stuff, of course, but it was so much fun.
So that's living in a city, though, isn't it? It's every city, everywhere's like that.
Well, things we did, and they wasn't. And again, I'm not telling tales, so I'm just going to tell you some stupid things. But we used to set mattresses on fire and jump over them. Like 3 or 4 matches where people would dump and tip, and we just set them on fire and jump over them, it's like idiots. Like, see my kids. If I see kids doing that now, I want to go and slap them. They'd be scumbags in my mind, but that was me. And that was doing because there was nothing else to do. And then obviously other kids would go breaking into houses and stealing cars. And well, there wasn't having many cars to steal, to be honest, back when I was a kid. But and then you take your own path. I was lucky for me that I never took drugs. So I tried them out, the ganja, whatever it's called, but I tried it, but I didn't like it. I didn't like the cigarettes, didn't like that. I didn't take any of the drugs. I wouldn't take speed, I wouldn't take coke, and all my mates, or some of my mates, were trying it, as kids do. I never really had that in me to do it. And obviously I didn't want to drink, and my friends, luckily my friends who would go out and get absolutely ratted on all sorts, whatever you could put in your mouth or up your nose or whatever it is, they would never want to try and get me to do it. And I loved them for that, because they didn't try and, have some of this, have some of that. They knew what I was and what I wanted to do. And we were friends, and they accepted me for who I was, and we just carried on. Like I accepted them for who they were.
I don't think you ever needed any, mate. Definitely not speed.
I think that was the big reason why I didn't take speed, because it was base then, by the way. They used to take the base, and I kind of thought, I'll have a heart attack. I'll be the one who dies. Because you heard all these stories that probably weren't true. But I thought, I can't take speed. Look at me. And then obviously speed went to coke, and then it went on to stuff. But even when people were sniffing glue and sniffing gas, I wouldn't do it. I just thought, I'm not doing that. There was always a fear that I just didn't feel that was right for me. And I'm glad, to be honest.
No, mate, great choice. So 1992 comes. You turned professional at the age of 18. We're just about to go there, I think. Too young?
Yes, in hindsight, too young. But you always say that, too young. But will I won a world title? I stay pro, and then I stay amateur, and I try and get the Olympics in '96. That would have been the aim, or the Commonwealth Games in '94. But then, do I get beat? Because if I go to the Commonwealth Games in '94, which I would have thought I'd be, by that time as an amateur, a favourite to win it. But Jason Cook from Wales, who was a good fighter, he was a featherweight. He probably would have moved up to lightweight, but he got to the final of the Commonwealth Games. If he don't move up to lightweight, I got to fight Jason Cook in the Welsh final. What if he beats me? Then all of a sudden, I'm not the Welsh champion, European silver medalist moving on to turning pro. I'm a guy who got beaten in the Welsh final all of a sudden. So you don't know, I think I would have beat him, but he thought he would have beat me. And two quality fighters, that's what you think. And I tried to get the Olympics '96. Do I qualify? Do I beat, I think it was it Burke? I forget his name now, the Scouts kid. Do I beat him in the qualifiers? Do I get there? And also then I'm 22. And then do I get a world title shot in 1997? Do I get the brain scans? That happened earlier. You don't know. You have to, at the end of the day, you have to wipe your chops with what you were given, the choices you made, and it was what it was. And you're lucky you win. You're lucky you win loads of money. You're lucky you don't. Unlucky you don't. You're unlucky if you don't win stuff. So and you gotta treat it that way. Otherwise, you just drive yourself mad, because you can all pick a different path. And boxers are the worst for it. We're the worst for feeling sorry for ourselves because we all think we were better than we were. Every boxer got a sob story, and you think, oh, fuck's sake, mate. You know what I mean? Calm down. But you all do, but so do you. Your life might be great, but in your mind, it can always be better. You always want more, and everyone does. Your life could have been different. If I didn't have a kid at 18, would I have met a supermodel at 19? But then I wouldn't have my daughter, and I wouldn't have my granddaughter. And so you exactly. You take what you're given and be happy with it. But I'm never happy. I always want more.
Do you remember your debut?
I do. Yes, I do.
He was an emerging fellow on it. I mean, looking back at it, it's probably quite a tough debut, really.
It's a ridiculous debut. He was. The thing is, though, back then there was no YouTube. There was no really internet. There was an internet, but there was no really an internet that was accessed by the mass public. So there was no box rec. You didn't know about the kids. It was just everything was word of mouth. So I didn't know the kid's record until after the fight. So wow. He was 2-0. He was 2-0 with 2 KOs, I think. And he could have been a world beater. It was a stupid. Like, I'm 18, I mean, when I was 18, I looked about 15 when I was 18. I was really young and I had no strength. So it could have been. I could have come unstuck. Obviously, my manager has taken the someone else's word that I would be too skillful for him or whatever. I don't know. Or my trainer, Pat Thomas, thought I was going to be the best thing ever. So he was probably saying, get anyone, he'll beat anyone. And so but that wasn't my hardest fight in my first sort of 4 fights. Michael Devaney was an Olympian, an ABA champion, an Olympian. And then he went on to be a British champion as a professional. I think I boxed him in my 3rd fight. And that was a stupid fight to take because he was a good fighter. He had a couple of losses, but he was good and strong and horrible, by the way. He wanted to fight me after. And I was having none of it. But that was so I had a good apprenticeship, probably a little bit too tough, maybe, but it was what it was. But you didn't know. You just you're fighting. You were given a fight date. You got to fight next week, or you got to fight next month, and you just took it. And you didn't ask. Like, as an amateur, you didn't ask you were fighting. I didn't know. I'm only finding out now, thanks to Facebook, people I boxed as an amateur, how good they were. I didn't know. Obviously, I boxed an international at like, what was that, about 13, about 14. Kevin Crumlin, I think from the north, I think, of northeast or something. But I knew he was good because it was Wales versus England. We boxed him in Ipswich back in 88 or something. And so I knew he was good. But I didn't know how good he was until recently, when people go, he went the NABCs and something like that, and you didn't realize how good they were. You just fight this kid. You boxed him, and that's how it was. It was crazy.
So you win your first 5, yeah, and then you get rewarded with a massive card, Old Trafford on the Eubank Benn. What did that feel like for you? I bet that build-up was something else, wasn't it? Well,
it was funny because when I found out, I was sulking because the week before, so I'm in my local rugby club. It was late at night, and because it was Lennox Lewis versus Frank Bruno, and it went on late, and it was in Cardiff. So I'm really pissed off now. It was the debut of Joe Calzaghe as well. But I could sell lots of tickets. I could sell tickets thanks to my brother, who was a football boy, and my dad's as well, who worked for the council. And so I sold lots of tickets. There's a show in Cardiff. I'm undefeated, and I can't get on the bill. So I'm having curry and chips in my local rugby club, Glamorgan Wanderers Rugby Club, in the top end of Ely. Like, pissed off watching this fight, but pissed off really that I'm not fighting on the bill. And then I get a phone call the next morning off my trainer, because I didn't have a mobile back then, of course. Very few people did. I get a phone call off my trainer saying, "You're boxing Old Trafford next week."
Was that good enough, Barry? Or?
Unbelievable. I couldn't get. I was just like, I got from being feeling sorry for myself within Benn and Eubank too. The fight wasn't great as it turns out, but the whole occasion was brilliant. I got to meet Michael Nunn at the weigh-in. I was a massive Michael Nunn fan, huge Michael Nunn fan as it goes, and it was better than both the Benn and Eubank. Let's be honest, at that particular time, and it was just he was there at the Midland Hotel where the weigh-in was, and it was just great. It was just a great experience for a young kid. But I didn't know who I was fighting. I boxed a fellow called John White, who was undefeated, a Manchester boy. So I'm in the away corner, of course. And I'm still young, still 19. And I dropped him. I remember it was weird. I dropped him. And you could hear the American commentators, I think it might have been for Showtime, were just warming up. So sometimes when they warm up for commentary, they'll do a round or two of a fight. So I could hear them. I could hear them talking about it, because it was I boxed there. It was only about 6,000, 7,000 people in there, but that's like 6,000-7,000 people in the stands. So it's like, it's eerie silence. But there was only 5 fights on that bill. They didn't have, back then, there wasn't like 12 fight, 15 fight bills like it is nowadays. They were 5 fights. So I'm only one of 10 people to box in Old Trafford, which is quite, and the first fight on as well, ironically. So it was quite good. And I only found out how good I knew John White was undefeated when I read the program on the night. So I didn't know who John White was, how good he was, who he was. I'm boxing a kid from Manchester. I don't care. He's from South. I don't care. I don't miss out Mr. B. He's like, I'm boxing, you know. I get there and I get the program because I bought about 6 programs, like £5 each. I pretty much spent my purse on my programs to take home the souvenirs. And I see he was undefeated, and I was the opponent. I thought I didn't realize it was the opponent until I read the program, and it was only literally on Box Nation a few years ago. We had Robin Reid on the Bunts Hour with Steve Bunts, and Robin Reid off air was telling me how good John White was. I didn't know he was getting good, because be fair, not disrespect to John. I schooled him a little bit, to be fair. I dropped him. That's how bad it was for him. That's how bad of a night it was for John. He got dropped by Barry Jones. But I know.
Again, you're talking yourself down, honestly.
No, but so that was it. So that was a great night for me. And then obviously, I found out later that John was a really good fighter, and Robin Reid said how hard he could hit. When he used to spar with John, and he couldn't believe how hard he could hit for a featherweight. So yeah, that was a real boost for me. That was a real boost.
Oh, that's good. Then you move another 8 undefeated to get to the end of 95, I think it was. And you took a year out, didn't you? Now, a year out...
I got to say, before that, I beat Neil Swain. A real good quid. Now, Neil Swain, he was the Commonwealth champion. He had a real good fight with Michael Brody in 96, I think. But I beat him. He was undefeated as well. I mean, literally 2 fights after John White, I'm boxing Neil Swain, who's undefeated again. Another undefeated fighter. So I think I boxed about 4 undefeated fighters, my first 7 fights or something silly like that, or 10 fights or something. But he won, and a British champion and a Commonwealth champion, future champions. But he was good, Neil. And if Neil Swain was disciplined, he would have really gone somewhere. As far as to say, if he was disciplined and trained hard, he would have beat Michael Brody on that night. He probably would have beat me, to be honest. But he never. So tough. But yeah. I took some time out. I had a young family, and that sort of broke down. But it wasn't really. That was part of it. But it was a case of I left Billy and Pat. Billy Aird was my manager. Pat Thomas was my trainer. I didn't know Billy when I signed with him. I just knew Pat. Pat was a 2-time British champion, 2-weight British champion from Cardiff. So he had loads of respect. And he came down the gym and just told me how good I was all the time. And then I just turned pro with him. Now, I shouldn't have done that. And he shouldn't have been allowed to come in the gym, to be honest, to do that. But I love Pat, because Pat genuinely believed I was going to be a world champion. Even when I didn't think about being a world champion, I just wanted to be a champion of something. And he said, you'll be a world champion. He believed it. I actually think he messed my style up, because my style as a pro wasn't the style as an amateur. I was more aggressive as an amateur. And he changed that. Maybe for the better, I don't know. My father seems to think for the worst, and probably was. But either way, he's seen a talent in me. But I had 3 years with them, and I had 10 fights really quick, and then I couldn't get a fight. So I boxed and eliminated. I had a day's notice for a 10-rounder against an undefeated kid called Justin Murphy, and I didn't get a break. And I beat him. I got this ear from it, the cauliflower ear.
Oh no, I didn't see that before. You just
I got, because I never got rid of it, because I kept it because it was I shouldn't have took the fight. A 10-rounder. I wasn't training. Luckily, I didn't smoke or drink, and the weight, I was a small featherweight. I was never a super featherweight. I know one of World titles is a super feather. I was never a super featherweight. I was a super bantamweight, really. A big super bantamweight who would have struggled to make the weight, but shouldn't be my weight. But I wanted to be a featherweight champion, because I was a Howard Winston fan, so I wanted a British featherweight title like Howard Winston had. That's what I wanted. Like, if I could be anywhere closer to Howard Winston, that would do for me. And so I wanted to be the featherweight champion, because they had prestige. Super bantamweight didn't have the same. Well, I don't think they had a British title when I turned pro at super bantamweight back in '92. And if they did, they only had like 6 fighters in the weight. Well, that's being the best out of 6 fighters didn't really appeal to me. I wanted to be the best out of 95 fighters or 100 fighters we had in the country at the time of featherweight, and which I wasn't, so it didn't matter. But anyway, so I wanted to be a featherweight, so that was my weight. So making the weight wasn't a problem for the day's notice for the fight. I could have stretched it down, went for a run. I'm 9 stone, no problem. Gets there, boxing at 1 o'clock in the morning, 12 at night. We were the last ones on. Did a 10-rounder. I think I was quite comfortably ahead in the first half of the fight. But then obviously, because I'm not ring fit, I panicked and I struggled. And then Justin Murphy was a fit, strong kid, a good fighter, undefeated, full of ambition, young. And he just kept swinging. He kept hitting me here. So when you're tired, your timing's out. Kept banging at my ear. Was literally like this. So I would bounce, and when I stopped, my ear was still flapping. And and luckily the referee never stopped it. I got the win, but I got the scar to show for it. And I've kept it because it was a reminder of always be prepared, pretty much. And take a fight at short notice. Don't be foolish. So anyway, that I've digressed, of course. This is what I'll do constantly.
It's all right.
But then I couldn't get no fights. The only fights I could get were fights like that. Too much of a risk. And then I phoned up Billy, did the right thing. I didn't just disappear. My contract had expired. I did my 3 years. I signed for 3 years. I was a man of my word. I did my 3 years. At the end of my 3 years, I phoned Billy and said, I'm not going to ruin my contract. I was only young, 21 maybe, and I was nervous about doing it, but I had to do the right thing. I could have just disappeared and signed with someone else. But you don't treat people like that, because me and Pat still speak now. Me and Billy, when we see each other, we'll still say hello. They might have some animosity towards me, possibly, but it's not enough to not talk to me, because I didn't just disappear. Yeah. I left them. They invested in me, not massively financially, but they invested in me. And one of my biggest regrets was Billy wasn't a multi-millionaire, because I would have loved to have stayed with Billy and finished the journey that I started with them too. It would have been fantastic. I would have loved to have said that, but it wasn't to be. Then I didn't sign with Di Gardner. I was going to do a little promotional deal with Di Gardner. And then I got offered the fight in South Africa, only a couple of grand, but it was a WBC international title fight. They were new back then, but it was like, it gets you in the top 15 in the world or something. So I'll take it. I got told I'm boxing a kid who was like, had 15, 110 or something like that. Stopped 2. I find out it's a fellow called Cassius Belue, who ended up to be a 2-weight world champion, Cassius Belue, or 2-time world champion, maybe 2-weight, IBF title. And he was like a 6-foot featherweight who did like 12 and knocked out 12. So I thinking, I go to South Africa 2 days before the fight, by the way, gets 2 grand against a kid who's 6 foot, so who might knock me out. It's going to be close. If he's that tall and I'm a boxer, it's going to be take me a few rounds to get hold of him. I'm not going to get a decision. So I said no. I said no. And then I got offered a job in Dublin, working. My family had sort of broken down. And I pretty much went, fuck this boxing shit. This is just like, it breaks your heart. And it does break your heart. And it's happened lots more since then. And I went away. And I was earning good money in Dublin, fireproofing a shopping centre in Blanchardstown. And it's still there, amazingly. So there's obviously been no fires. So we haven't had any fires yet, thank God. But and yeah, but like anything, like any first true love, you get drawn back, and I got drawn back to it, and I'm glad I did. I went back, signed with Frank Warren. He said, "You get a few wins, I get you one of those international title fights, and I'll get you a world title fight if you keep winning." And he was true to his word.
So your first one back, 96, David Morris. You won that fight. I know you didn't. Well, you did, but the judges saw it as a draw, yeah? But you won the fight.
See, I don't mind it so much now. Like, at the time, I was gutty because, like, it wasn't a draw. I'm honest about my career. I'm the most honest person you'll find about boxing, certainly about my own career. And I won that fight. That was one of the few fights I enjoyed, because you don't enjoy fights when you can't punch, because you're always aware of the guy's always coming at you. I enjoyed that fight because I used to spar with Dave, and Dave was game and tough, and I liked Dave, but you know, it was never a draw. I don't know whether he felt sorry for him because he did so well. I don't know what. I heard all sorts of stupid rumors about the referee. He had cataracts, or something. He had his operation for cataracts after, or he was a Mason.
Probably.
He was a Mason, and Dave Morris's trainer was a Mason, but I think all that's bollocks, you know. I think he's seen it the way he saw it, and he was wrong. But it wasn't a loss. But it's still, to a boxer, you want an unblemished record. And I should have had it, you know. And also, he's walking around then, Dave Morris, telling everyone when I won a world title, that's a win to him, because he can say, well, it was only a draw because he was Barry Jones. But I wasn't Barry Jones back then. I was just another kid. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't the ex-world champion or the superstar. I was just an undefeated kid. I wasn't a big name. So yeah, so I wasn't happy about it, but that's how it was. But it didn't derail me. That's luckily.
So then, like you said, Frank Warren got you your first title shot. It was an IBF Intercontinental, wasn't it? That would be probably quite new then, was it? The Intercontinental belts.
Yeah, they sort of had some worth, actually. So we weren't going to take the fight. My dad used to advise me on a lot of stuff, and he said to take it. I said, I'm not a super featherweight. Like, I'm not a featherweight, Dad. I wanted to go down to super bantamweight. I really wanted to make it, because by then now, we're in 96 now, and well, 97 by then. But when I go back, it was 96. So all of a sudden, the super bantamweight division's busy. Spencer Oliver, Patrick Mullins. It's a good division. Neil Swain. It was Brody. Well, I think Brody was still featherweight then. He went down to super bantam, but it was a thriving division. Wilson Doherty. It was good, and I thought, or maybe Wilson Doherty was still a featherweight back then. Sorry, but either way, it was a good division. So I'll win I'll be big at that weight all of a sudden. You know what I mean? I'm not like a little powder featherweight. No, I'm strong, and they'll have trouble with me. These guys. I'm not saying I would beat any of them, but they're gonna have a bad night. I fancy I will beat them all, but either way, it's a good division I'm in. So that's where I'm gonna go. And by the way, the featherweight division is Naz, Steve Robinson, Paul, Billy Hardy, Duke McKenzie, Colin McMillan. Even John Joe Irwin was class. You know what I mean? It's like I was like number 6, and the top 4 were all former or current world champions. You know what I mean? So yeah. So anyway, so I think I'll go there then. That's brilliant. And then I get the super featherweight fight offered to me, and my father said, take it. Peter Judson will come right at you. He's made for you. He's made for you. I said, but Dad, he's super strong. He said, my dad, but he's not a big puncher. I said, but he's super strong. And it'd be my first 12 rounds. I'd never done 12 rounds before. I'd done one 10-rounder, but I got this, and I wasn't prepared for that. And so it was a worry. And he said, you take it. And I'm never afraid of losing, by the way. I just didn't want to, after this and that South Africa thing, when I got misled information, I didn't want to put myself in an untangible position, an unwinnable position. I want to give myself every opportunity I can to win. And if I lose, I don't mind. Well, I can accept that and move on if I've done my best. But I took the opportunity. I thought, well, I got the speed, the movement, and if I haven't got the strength, then my legs got to be better than ever before. And it was a hard fight, and it was a good fight. And thanks to Peter, it was a good fight. Because if I had my way, it would have been a boring stink fest where I would have won every round by throwing 3 punches. But he came at me, and I took the thing. And luckily, I could just train. I didn't have to make the weight. I mean, I was at the weigh-in with the Mars bar. That's how easy it was. It was disrespectfully easy. And so literally every title fight I had, I never struggled to make the weight. It was ridiculous, really. You put yourself for you're like 2 rounds down before you start. But that's no one's fault but my own. I didn't have to take the fights. I didn't have to I could have said, no, I'm a super bantamweight, I'm a featherweight, or whatever I want to be. Or I could have bulked up and done strength work. And I didn't want to. I just wanted to do what I'd always done. Train hard, train fast, get fit. And that was all. That's how I did it. It was naive, but that's how we did it. And
it was Sheffield. It was Sheffield one at that one. Was it Hillsborough Arena?
Yeah. Hillsborough, yeah, Sheffield. So it was great. It was a great atmosphere. I took a couple of coaches up, and we had a good crowd there, and and it was brilliant. It was a really good night, and it changed. That night changed my life. And me and Peter are still friends now. Ironically,
no, still
speak. Yeah, oh, Peter's a raving lunatic. Like I wouldn't want to. Like the thought of meeting Peter. Like people say, when you're a world champion boxer, even though I'm only small, people go, "Oh, I wouldn't want to mess with you." And I'm like, "Fucking hell, mate!" Like 90% of the people who I beat would batter me outside. So like, don't worry about me. Don't worry about me. Like Peter would have chewed me up. Like he literally, he scared me in the ring, in the fights. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he grabbed hold of me, he butted me one time. Like, what's your fucking head? He said, he went to butt me because I was dipping in low and I catched him a few times, and he grabbed hold of me and went, "Shut up." Whoa.
So you won that belt, then you defended it. I can never pronounce this guy's name properly.
Afif de Jelty.
Yeah, there you go.
My best win. Actually, yeah. That was my best win, yeah, because Afi went on to be a European champion, and he beat Charles Shepherd, what else did he beat? Alex Moon, Dean Pithy. He came over here and he smashed every. The only ones he didn't lose to over here was me and Colin Dunn at lightweight. And he won the European title then in sort of 2000. Had a good run at that as well at sort of 43 or whatever he was. He was a bit of an enigma. But he could punch. He had a really good left hook to the body. He winded me in the 11th round. And but I won. I won sort of, it was not clear, but there was only one winner. And I was back at home. And yeah, and that was a good little defence back home. And that set me up for my world title shot, which wasn't what I thought it was going to be. So I'll tell you about my world title opportunity. I'm at a boxing show, a dinner show in Bridgend, which is not far from Cardiff. I get a phone call. I had a mobile phone then. It was one of those phones where you paid like 50 quid for it and it could last 6 years or 6 minutes. It was one of those dodgy phones. It was just telling you just bought it. Like it was like a lottery phone. You don't know how long it's going to last. So you just use as much as you can. So I had one of these, and Ernie Fossey phoned me up, who was the matchmaker for Frank Warren back then. And he went, "Do you want to box for the world title?" And I went, "Oh, fuck off," and put the phone down. I just think he was taking a piss. I genuinely did thought he was taking a piss on me, and I couldn't have it. I can't have it, like taking the piss on me, boxing world title. So he rings me again, and like shouts at me, and like put this fucking, because like Ernie wouldn't take no shit, Ernie. Like, and I was like, "Oh, sorry, I'm so sorry. Do you want to box for the world title?" I said, "You fucking serious?" He went, "Fucking, do you want?" And he's like fucking Jonesy, you fucking can't, fucking. I went, "Yes, okay." And he just put the phone down, and that was it. So I phoned my dad. I said, "Dad, I boxed for a world title," and he said, "Fuck off," and he almost put the phone down on me. And then, so my father said, "When?" I said, "I don't know." "Who?" "I don't know." Like I didn't know who, when, what weight, how much, nothing. All I knew was someone said, "Do you want to box for a world title?" And I just went, "Yes." And again, it's that just making that snap decision sometimes can change your life. And so I'm IBF. I'm like number 10 or 11 in the IBF. So I get the Boxing Monthly and the Boxing News because that's the only ratings he had. So the champion is a tour. And I'm not looking at the WBO. I'm looking at the IBF. So I'm thinking the champions are Arturo Gatti. Fucking I box Arturo Gatti. Yeah, you battered me. I think Arturo Gatti at super featherweight was the best he ever was. And he'll batter me, but I don't give a shit about that. I'm boxing Arturo Gatti. I'll get to go to America with a bit of luck, and I'll box Arturo Gatti. And as long as I don't like bottle it or get absolutely battered in a round and a half, then I don't mind. And you never know. But then I thought, my father's going, "I think he's moved up, Barry. I think he was struggling for weight for years. I think he's gone up." And so the number one contender was Zuma Nelson. Like a 95-year-old Zuma Nelson. Right? He was well past his sell by date, but still good, and still too good to beat me. Still too good for me, I should say. But I'm thinking, oh, what if it's a Zuma Nelson? It's a vacant title. That makes more sense now. Now that he snapped me in, and they'll get a Zuma over here like they have before, because he'd be, at the end of his career, he'd probably be relatively cheap, and he'll help sell a show because he's a Zuma Nelson, for fuck's sake. And he might be setting him up for Naz or something like that. You know what I mean? You come over here, you knock me out in dramatic fashion, and they set up for Naz to move up the super featherweight and be a 2-weight world champion. And that's all. I see all these things. I'm thinking, Zuma Nelson. Now, if he's old, and if he has the worst night of his life, and he gets cramp, and he loses sight in one eye, and he has half a stroke, and I can be better than I've ever been in my entire life, and really lucky, and and the referee can help me out. I could beat the Zuma Nelson, and that's it. I'm a legend then. You know what I mean? I'm like, Pat Codell couldn't do it. You know what I mean? Jimmy Mack couldn't do it. I beat the Zuma. The people forget that he's 75 years of age. I beat the Zuma Nelson. That's it. And it wasn't that. It was the WBO title against Wilson Palacios, who was a lightweight. So we had a lightweight and a featherweight boxing and a super featherweight. And that's what it was. And he wasn't great. He wasn't bad, actually. He had a good record. He knocked the load out, and he was heavy-handed. But yeah, it was, and I didn't box great, and I hurt my shoulder in the first couple of rounds. He hurt my shoulder, to be fair. You can't complain about that, because that's what happens in a fight. But I did enough. I did enough every round, and I won quite on the scorecards. Was quite comfortable in the end. And yeah,
well, it was convincing. Yeah, I remember looking at the scorecards. Convincing on them.
Yeah.
Explain your emotions. You were a world champion.
Oh, it's at that particular time, you are a world champion. Whatever the climate or whatever you think, looking back, it's just crazy. Like your whole life, it's your lifetime. It's weird. It's a weird feeling because it's the best thing you can ever possibly feel. It's like it's your lifetime ambition. Whatever you dreamed of as a footballer, to play at Wembley if you're a kid, or play for Man United, that's it. And it happens. It all comes together, and all your friends are watching and all cheering for you, and you're just like, but it's also it also becomes an anticlimax. You're thinking, this is not real. Is that if this is real, where's the fireworks then? What's going? So you can't. It's too much. Unless you're like a Kazagi or a big, or someone who you think is always going to be destined for it. It takes a long time to process that you've actually done. So it's a weird feeling. I remember I went to bed that night, and I had my belt at the bottom of the bed, and when I woke up, and I only slept about 2 hours because obviously all my mates were staying in a hotel, and we almost got chucked out. They ruined the place. It was a fantastic night. It really was. Not for the hotel staff. It was the worst night of their life. But for our lot, for a bunch of scumbags from Ely, we just ran it. Like it was just, we just ruined the hotel, the Intercontinental Hotel it was, and we just ruined it. And it was really bad. Like there was just people knocking doors all the time. People complain. Cause remember, like you have, like my mate, two of my mates would get a room, but 6 of them would be sleeping in it.
Yeah.
And but then they take all their bottles and they get drunk, and then they drink after and whatever else they're doing, and they're up all night. And the hotel is really just another nightclub for them because they're not sleeping; they sleep on the way home on the coach. So you've got people knocking. They've got the managers knocking the door with security, and they open the door, and there's like 6, 7, 8, 12 lunatics, and they go, "I'll keep it down, will you?" Yeah, okay. As soon as they shut the door, But anyway, I went to bed that night. My belt's at the bottom of the bed. When I woke up then, a few hours later, I couldn't open my eyes. All I got was my foot looking for the belt. I didn't believe it. And I went home then. There was a little, around my gym, there was about 20, 30 people there, cut the press, and people were lifting me up, and it was just weird. It was just weird, like, it was just unreal. And it was lucky because on the night, Robbie Regan was a friend of mine and someone I looked up to, Robbie, as a fighter. Really unlucky. I was unlucky. He was more unlucky than I. And he was there that night, and that was great to see someone I looked up to, someone who'd helped me with sparring over the years. Taught me. I've sparred with him. He was the star, but he helped me. Like, didn't beat me up in sparring, taught me a few things, and to see him ringside as well, and to share it with my dad being in my corner, to share it with my father. Ronnie Rush was my trainer, of course, but it was just great. Like, wow. My grandfather was there, and it means more to them, like to see their son, their grandson. It's not just that Barry; it's one of their grandsons or one of their sons to do something like that. If from our environment, I could be a nuclear physicist, it wouldn't mean anything to them, but to do that was everything. So yeah, it was. I was the top of the world. Nothing could take me away from it.
So yeah, boom. So I guess the next bit is the hardest fight of your life. Wasn't in the ring, was it?
No, it was the brain scan stuff, and obviously I win a world title, and then my scan was due in March. I had my brain scan. There's a change in my scan. No, the boxing board did the right thing. They said you can't fight. We have to look into it, of course. But they didn't quite do that. I don't want to slag the boxing board off because they do a fantastic job in so many other ways, but they didn't do a good job for me, and I should have sued him. And I sort of half regret I didn't now because financially I'd be better off. I'm sort of glad I never as well because why would you want to? It is what it is. But there was a change in my scan. It was because when you turn pro, there were CT scans, and then from thanks to Frank Warren actually, and with the Michael Watson stuff and everything else, it was MRI scans were introduced. So from 97 was the first MRI scan. So 1998 was the first time they had two scans to compare each other. So there was a gap. It's called the cavum septum pellucidum, and it's two membranes here. So when you're a baby, you've got a little soft spot. I don't know if you've got any kids. They have a little dent here, and it's soft. So that's your cavum septum pellucidum. And it's two bits of Killington, I remember, and they join up. Now they think that about 1 in 10, they don't quite join up all together. So obviously with trauma, that's trauma. Anything move too much shaking the head's trauma. It moved. So I lost my license by 0.2 of a millimeter. that cost me my livelihood, my dream, my financial rewards, of course, because the big rewards come after you in the title. Your defences is where the money multiplies very quickly, of course. And you have that contract with Frank Warren was a big payer back then, and that contract I had was big, especially for someone like me. It was too big. It's all back end loaded, so the first two defences and us. But you realistically, I can box three British fighters to get to the big money, for a world title. That's how ludicrous it was. So, but they said no. But luckily, I had a good doctor friend. I don't want to name him too much. He knows who he is, but because I don't want to get him, his name tarnished too much. But he helped me out. He said, "Let me look into it." And I went to see a brain surgeon, one of the top ones in the country. It cost me a few grand for the day. And he said, "I can see what they're looking at, but as far as I'm concerned, you're under no more danger than any other boxer in the country." So I went to the boxing board with that information, and they said no. And I couldn't accept that, because I thought, so Dr. Whiteson, I think it was the main doctor in the British Boxing Board. Now he's a GP, which disparagingly, he's a jack of all trades in the medical industry. That's like pedantic. I know that, but and then you got a specialist in a hospital in his field saying I'm fine, and then a jack of all trades saying I can't fight. I don't understand. So you were saving boxing, not me. And then we had a big discussion about it all. They tried to use this Casellas theory that was used in the 80s to ban boxing, that the British Boxing Board rubbished, and they tried to use that to get me away. But I already had that information. I said, you can't use Dr. Casellas' theory because you rubbished that in the 80s. So there's nothing wrong with me. You can't prove it. And then it was something along the lines of there might be an increased risk of senility in your later life. And I said, well, that's a risk. That's a moral decision, not a medical decision, because every boxer takes that risk that you might slow down. You take that risk of a better, younger life, or build a life for your family. I might have that anyway.
And that's your decision, it should be, surely.
Well, ban boxing then.
Yeah.
Because there's no aftercare in boxing. The reason there's no aftercare in boxing is because if they studied all the retired boxers, there'd be no boxing. Because it has a long-lasting effect on all of us, including people like me who retired at 25, who didn't take millions of punches, but it's affected me. I was sharper than this. And there's other boxers, especially boxers from the 80s. You've spoken to boxers, ex-boxers, and you can tell a boxer who's just started their career to a boxer who's just ended their career. And some active boxers are not the same as they were when they were 22, or they are now they're 32. So, it has an effect. But we take that risk. So does heading a football. So does running on a tracksuit too hard and too long. All these things have an effect. That's the nature of the game. So we take that risk with our eyes wide open. And if there's something that can be, if there's something that can have a fatality in the ring, or there's some obvious sign of a mass deterioration, then you should be safe from yourself. But the whole thing is as well, no one was really clear. No one was 100% sure about it. So they only give my license back when I went back with a barrister. That's the truth. When there comes some financial implications, or legal implications, that's when they give my license back. And I sort of wish they never know, because I had a box Arcelino Freitas.
Yeah, well, I was going to mention the 6-rounder and then into the Freitas, but is it right you didn't after the brain stuff, you never sparred again, did you? Is that right?
No, I never. And it was a little bit to do with. I had a few more medicals than most boxers did, and so it was a little bit more paranoia about it. But also by that time, my trainer Ronnie had sort of given up on boxing. We didn't really. It was just weird. Like we're very naive about stuff, and we just trained. And I didn't spar. He didn't organise any sparring for me. I didn't bother. I was bitter about boxing back then, because it became about the money. Before then, it was never about the money. But then when money's put in front of you, then it becomes about it. So all I'm thinking is that 18 months out, 2 years more or less, how much I could have earned, because there was hundreds of thousands of pounds there. It was almost £500,000. So I'm thinking, for me in the 90s, for me living in Cardiff, how many houses can I buy with that? Do you know what I mean? It's ridiculous. So it changes your life, and so I'm bitter about it. And so you don't think, you just think I'll get this fight over, and but there's no excuse. I got no excuses. I didn't make any excuses after that fight, because I got beat by the better guy. No, I never sparred. He never made the weight, by the way, and he never made the weight of the weigh, and Ian Dark said it. He was there. It was ridiculous. But they're just minor things. Ultimately, he was too good for me, and I'm happy with that because I couldn't have beat him in any day of the week.
No, but you knocked him down.
Yeah, what a fucking mistake that was, eh?
Right, listen, Barry, we could talk all night, so yeah. I'm going to try and wrap this up because I know you're tight for time tonight. So just a couple of last questions from the followers. The first one, I think I know the answer to this, but is it true people used to mistake you for Barry McGuigan?
I overplay it. But yes, I did, especially sort of like in the late 90s and the early 2000s, because I had a bit of hair then. I had like an M head, you know, the M head. Well, you've got no hair. You must have had the M head stage. You know, you've got a little bit in the middle of it going here.
The island.
And I had a bit of a goatee, and Barry had the same. So we don't look too dissimilar. I don't really see it as much, but yeah. So I get it now and again. And I mean, this year I get, oh, Barry, how are you, mate? And I go, yeah, good, yeah. And they go, oh, I'll never forget that Pedrosa fight. but I mean, I would be like 5-10 minutes into a conversation with these people. And then like, oh, fuck's sake. We had it in the Box Nation, me and Bunty going in the Odyssey, so it would have been a Carl Frampton fight. And then before he won the world title, and someone across the road went, Barry! And I went, all right, mate. I'm full of myself. I'm on TV now, and I'm back in the game. Everyone knows who I am. People know me more from now than they do from my career. No one knew who I was. And so I'm getting like this second wind of adulation I never really had. So I'm loving it. All right, mate. And he went, oh, I loved you against Pedrosa. That's where they come from. And I just went, oh, you fucking wanker. Fucking hell. And Bunty and Lillis were laughing and taking a piss out of me. But I even had a woman once trying to chat me up, thought I was McGuigan. And I was sort of going along with it until I remembered, no, I'm not going to do that thing. I'm with somebody, but I thought I was flirting. I was going along with it until I remembered Barry's married. So I had to tell her because I was joking. I go, yeah, I remember you. Yeah, great. Hey, we should meet up sometime. And she's going, yeah. And I think it's because she thinks she's talking to a famous person who's changing her life. And I'm like, and she's drunk, of course. And I'm like, yeah. And all of a sudden I thought, and I'm not going to do nothing. It was just a laugh. And then I realized, oh, bloody hell, he's married, Barry. Like this is serious stuff. He won. He catches me with the left hook. He puts me to sleep. That's the one thing you got to worry about. And his son's like that. Yeah, like, so I had to go, oh, listen, I got to tell you, I'm not Barry McGuigan. My name's Barry, but I look a little bit like him, but I'm not. And also, he's fucking 10 years older than me, so it's an insult. So, yeah, it don't happen so much now, but it's happened enough.
Oh, it's brilliant. Right, the last one, it's probably the most important question I've asked you all night. Name your top 3 chocolate bars.
Oh, mate, I'm chocolate mad. I'm so much of a chocolate nut that I find it hard, and it's changed over the years. Dairy milk is always one of my favourites because you can just stick it in your mouth and just let it melt.
Classic, yeah.
Never used to be, but a Whisper has become one of my favourites. Again, it may be because I'm losing all my teeth. I like all the soft chocolate. Oh.
What's your number 1? Come on. What's your go-to bar?
Oh, mate. Oh. I think it's a Crunchy.
Crunchies are for Christmas.
What's that?
Crunchies, you just get them at Christmas. No one buys them, do they?
Every day's Christmas in my house. But do you know what, though? You could ask me tomorrow, and I'd have 3 different answers. I should say a Mars bar because I won a world title on Mars bars because that was my diet. Mars bars and Coca-Cola. That was my diet as a boxer. It was ridiculous, but I should have said that. But yeah, at the minute, they're my 3 favourites, I'm afraid.
Awesome, mate. Any quick message for the viewers?
Thanks for listening. Or sorry you've had to listen to this. But any questions, just follow me on Twitter. I'm the Clone Cyclone. That's obviously Barry McGuigan, not me.
I'm about to say, Barry McGuigan, thanks for your time. Barry Jones, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. Speak to you soon, mate. Thank you.
Take care, fella. Ciao, mate.